Welcome, everybody, to the Grueling Truth CFL Weekly Pick'em Show. If you listen to the Grueling Truth, you know last year we did an NFL Weekly Pick'em Show with myself, Matt Andrews-Gabbage, Leon Searcy, former Pittsburgh Steeler. So we figured we'd do it with the CFL, and I want to welcome in our panel, which we've got right now currently he's coaching with Wichita in the IFL, Wichita Falls, Brian Schmidt.
Hey, guys, how you doing?
All right, sorry, I blacked out on the Wichita or Wichita Falls. I figured if I just said Wichita, you know, it would be close enough. So
yeah, that's what a player said when he ended up in Wichita, Kansas. Oh, Wichita Falls, not Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, I always get it mixed up too because I think there's a CIF team or something in
there is
Wichita also. So yeah, I get confused all the time on that. And of course he was on our first CFL Legend show. He will be with us weekly to talk about the games the past week and predict the games coming up. Help us welcome four-time Grey Cup winner Robert Drummond.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
All right, and our final panelist writes for thegruelingtruth.net and hosts a podcast, which he can tell you about right now. Help welcome in Os Davis.
Hi, everybody. I hope you all did better in CFL Pick'em last week than I did. I went 1-3. Not so great a start.
David, you don't have to tell that because nobody heard what we picked last week. We just act like we were all 4-0.
This is the full disclosure part of the program. The rest of it is all smoke and mirrors.
All right, tell everybody about your Tuesday night show also.
Yes, coming out Tuesday night, and every Tuesday night is the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast, what we hope is a unique take on the CFL from a couple of American geeks who just love the Canadian game. That's Joe Pritchard, a lad from Wisconsin, Green Bay Packers fan, but during the Canadian season he's a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan, and myself. So please have a listen for that every Tuesday. We do game wraps. We do pick'ems for the next week. We do point spreads for the next week. We do grousing about fantasy football on our show. The full package.
All right, Os, I know you had a question you wanted to ask.
Yeah, I wanted to kick off the show, and this is something that I myself have been wanting to ask those in the know for, ever. Of course, after week one of any football season, the fans tend to go ballistic. Chicken Little comes out of the barnyard, and the sky is falling if your team gets crushed when they were supposed to be competitive, for example, giving up 42 points to Hamilton. But since we have a player, Robert, and we have a couple of coaches here, I'd like to ask you guys, especially Robert, how much do players and coaches take away from game one? How much does that affect you going forward and the team going forward?
You know what? As a former player, I mean, week one means really nothing. I mean, week one is basically for a player. It's you're breaking training camp. You know, you're just starting to get your legs back. You're just starting to get your body back. Yes, you want to go out there and win week one and go have some momentum going into the start of the season, but it actually means nothing. I can remember my first year in Toronto in 1996. You know, we went out against a tough Hamilton team. You know, and they ended up beating us in week one. Granted, we still went on to win the Grey Cup and go 15-3, so week one really meant nothing to us. You know, so week one is just you're feeling out your opponents, you're feeling out yourself, you're coming out of training camp, which is exhausting. You know, and you're just going out there and just trying to prove that you can win the game. But if you lose it, it's really nothing. You know, the meat and potatoes of the season is the midway until the end.
Mm-hmm. All right, Brian.
You know, week one really just becomes a matter of fixing the mistakes. You know, your biggest improvement usually is always from week one to week two. And it doesn't really mean a lot if you lose week one. You know, you're as a coach, you're looking to fix your mistakes and, you know, improve for week two. It's a 16-game season. Week one really is not a factor in terms of how good or how bad you're going to be. It's really just a matter of fixing mistakes and, you know, going from there. You know, fans get crazy about it, but from a coaching standpoint, you really don't get too crazy. You just work to fix your mistakes and get ready for week two.
Yeah, because really, if you're coming into a season, that first game, you really have no clue. I mean, it's different than preseason. You really have no clue what you need to work on yet. I mean, you have some idea, but you don't really know until the bullets start to fly. And then, you just got to adjust, because it may take a team, like Robert's been on teams before, that it might take 4 or 5 games even for your team to gel and come together.
It's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Yeah.
Don Matthews used to always tell us that.
All right, so we'll start off with recapping last week's game, and the first one we'll go to is a team whose fans are probably freaking out right now, which would be the Toronto Argonauts. They open a new stadium, beautiful stadium, place is packed, and Hamilton comes out and puts a major beat down on them, 42-20. Robert, what was your takeaway from that game?
You know what? I mean, all the excitement, all the uproar, about the new stadium and everything, don't feed into the concept of the Toronto team as being a bad team. There's so much on these young men and the coach's mind, going into a new stadium, going into a new setting. Yes, you have the vaunted Ticats coming into town to play you, but you know what? You can't feed in or buy into the simple fact that they got beaten in the game. As I said before, they're coming out of training camp. I mean, training camp is, in the CFL, NFL, wherever you play, it's exhausting on your body. You're tired. I'm pretty sure those guys, went back, and licked their wounds and realized, it's like, guys, okay, it's time to wake up. I don't buy anything into the first game of the season. That means absolutely nothing. It's just a bunch of new guys trying to find themselves, trying to find their rhythm, trying to find who they are. You know what? They took a butt with them. You know what? But I tell you what, later on in the season, like Coach Matthews used to always tell us, not how you start, it's how you finish. What's going to make the difference. And that's what Toronto's going to be a strong team. And you know what? They'll be in the thick of things later on in the season. So right now, don't buy into this first game. Fanatics is what I call it.
Yeah, and my question here will go with Brian. Masoli played really well for Zach Collaros. So I think even though the week one's not a huge thing, I think it's huge for Hamilton, because they had to be wondering if they could just hold on until Collaros gets back. And now maybe if Masoli keeps playing the way he did, maybe you don't have to rush Collaros back so quickly.
Exactly. I was thoroughly impressed with Hamilton. First of all, everybody just hold on until Collaros gets back. Well, they didn't want to just hold on. I think they proved that right now, to me, they're the second best team in the league. Coming out of week one doesn't mean a whole lot, but for them, from a confidence standpoint, and from the ability now to look at what we can do for the next 4 to 6 weeks, this is a team that, I think from a confidence standpoint right now, it's got to be cloud nine. That was absolutely an impressive offensively. It was very impressive.
All right, and Os, give us your take on the game. Toronto, Ricky Ray played a decent game. He was 26 for 36, 2 touchdowns and an interception. But I think the question has to be asked, age-wise, can Ray still lead the Argonauts to the playoffs?
Right. That's what I was going to say, is that during this game, I think at halftime, my friend Mike called me up and asked me pretty much straight out, is Ricky Ray done? Now, it was interesting before that Robert brought up, there's a lot of young guys on this team. There's a lot of new guys. They're still figuring out the system. But here's a guy who's been rehabbing for X number of months. He hasn't played a game in quite some time. This guy, he was touted as ready to go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for most of, I'd say at least the first 3 quarters, this guy looked like he could not shake the rust off. And I'm just wondering how much of that is, just being on the field after so long away, and how much of it is the dude is 35. How much of this is the beginning of the end? Toronto, yes, I like they have a solid roster. Sure, they could end up being one of the top 6 teams, but Ricky has got to be considered a big question mark. And I don't just mean to jump on a hot take bandwagon here. I was quite concerned with the lackluster performance. I was wondering how much of this is the lingering effects of the injury and so on. In any case, I really believe they're going to need a healthy Ricky to really compete this year.
All right, then we had the Montreal Alouettes with a 22-14 win over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Montreal's defense looked really good. I think Kevin Glenn surprised people, 30 for 42. Brian, what was your take on the game, and are things as bad in Winnipeg as they seem?
I don't think it's as bad as they seem. First of all, do they just blind Kevin Glenn up every year? Because this is a guy that seems like every year he should not be able to put up stats. Again, the guy somehow makes it happen. I very impressed with that. I think this is a true case of a week one deal where, I don't know that, one team is as good as they seem and the other team is as bad as they seem. I think before this is going to shake out. I think we're going to see that Winnipeg's a lot better team than what they should have, and I don't know that Montreal is beating them as what they should. So I think things will shake out, but it's certainly an interesting game to watch because I'm not expecting anything.
All right, so Robert, on the other end, Montreal, I think a lot of people had them predicted to be at the bottom of the CFL. Do you think this is something that can carry over into the next week with them?
I mean, the funny thing I think about whenever I watch Montreal is they're the old Baltimore team. They came from the Baltimore CFL, and how close I came to signing with them. And the only reason I didn't sign with them was the simple fact of I didn't. And not for talent-wise, but I didn't want to be in the same backfield as Mike Pringle again because I knew that would mean I would play fullback. So I signed with Toronto. The rest is history. But I watch Montreal. I always have a heart for Montreal when I watch that team. And the one thing I'll say about that watching the game was that defense wins championships, and defense, even coming out of training camp, is the first thing to excel. You'll always have a coach tell you that it's harder for the offensive side of the of a team to get things rolling because these guys have to gel together. But the defense gels a lot faster than the offense, and Montreal seems to have it going right now. And watching the game, it's just like they're people had them in the bottom of the pack, but they're going to be a tough team to reckon with. Coach Pop has them really on top of their game right now, and it's going to be interesting to watch. But as I said before, it's just one game. You can't decide a lot of things off of one game. You're watching training camp teams basically right now. Teams come out of training camp just trying to find their sea legs.
Yeah, and I think the question with Winnipeg, Os, if you want to address this, they made a lot of changes in the off season.
Yeah.
And I know when I did the preseason rankings, it was like this is probably boom or bust for them. What was your takeaway from watching them?
Here's the other thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay. Well, here's the other thing that we should throw in about Winnipeg. Winnipeg had 11 days between action. Okay, they were the first team to finish their preseason schedule, so they've been sort of in mothballs for a week and a half. I think that's part of it, especially since, like Calgary, they came out very sluggish. They came out very, without pop. They didn't have the strikes. They didn't have the big plays. For me, that was a big thing. But for me, jury is out on Winnipeg. It's just one game, and it's one game played under, not exactly favorable conditions for them. So the jury is out. But for me, the huge thing about this game, and I'm an Alouettes fan, so for me, the big thing about this game was the evolution of Kevin Glenn. Okay, you look at his stats, and okay, we knew that coming into the season they had signed, Duron Carter. They bring aboard Kenny Stafford. They're building a super receiving corps and not improving the offensive line so much. So what did Kevin Glenn do in this game? He did what we consider, the prototypical CFL passing game, the dink and dunk, the almost the Peyton Manning strategy as he gets older. Now look, this guy went, let's see, I have the statistics here. He averaged only 11 yards per completion. He averaged only 8.25 yards per attempt. And yet, look at this. He gave Carter 8 receptions. Nick Lewis gets 6. S.J. Green gets 5 and a TD, which is, his specialty as the alpha dog out there. Kenny Stafford got 3. Even Sam Gagir got 3. Even Terrell Sutton out of the backfield got 4 receptions. This short passing game that Glenn has developed out of nowhere is going to run the Alouettes this year, and they could go far with this. I really like what he showed me. last night. Just ball control, keep the ball, don't go for the long strike when the arm strength might not be there. It's just, for me, it was, as an Alouettes fan, I am stoked. It may be one game, but don't rain on my parade. This was a fantastic show.
All right, and in the next game, the Ottawa Red Blacks got the revenge over the Edmonton Eskimos, winning the Grey Cup rematch 45-37, overtime thriller Saturday night in Edmonton. And it was Trevor Harris, not Henry Burris, who led the Red Blacks to victory after the rating most outstanding player from last year jammed his pinky finger on his throwing hand and couldn't return to the game. Start off with Robert. Were you surprised by Trevor Harris, and do you think Toronto's wishing maybe they'd have kept him around?
Man down, man steps up. That's what CFL football is all about. It was a shootout. What a great game. And again, Ottawa is a team that I played against earlier in the CFL. Then they went away for a while, but now they've come back. And it was just. I feel bad for them. They didn't win the Grey Cup. Because I thought that year they deserved it. But you know what? As I said before, what a great start. But one game means nothing. But for them, it's a pride thing. So, I'll give you a lot more information about them midway through the season, because that's when they'll start to get the real cutting time of the teams that will be championship caliber teams.
Yeah, but still, Brian, if you want to answer this, it's still, even though it is the first game, I think it's huge for Ottawa to go into Edmonton and get a win there.
Oh, absolutely. And not only is it a huge win from a confidence standpoint, but going back to Trevor Harris, I felt last year when he was with Toronto, he has the potential to be one of the top quarterbacks in the CFL. And here's this guy comes off the bench, 17 of 19. He is, to me, he is the real deal. And it also shows in the CFL the importance of having a good backup quarterback, which is why Ottawa went out and got him, because as we saw last year, Hamilton was one of the best teams in the league. Collaros goes down. Now all of a sudden, they come back to the pack. You've got to have two quarterbacks in the CFL, and this is a huge confidence builder for them. This is, as in your preseason rankings, having them number one. I agree with that, and the reason I agree with that is because what we saw here is they're a complete team, and maybe the deepest team in the league. And so this is a huge confidence builder for them. And, it gets that taste out of your mouth from last year. And, so now, this is going to be a team to watch. I really believe that.
Yeah, and I think Edmonton came in as being a lot of people's favorite. Os, it looks like the questions about the defense are going to remain for a few more weeks at least.
Is it going to matter? Is my question. If they can spin the scoreboard like this, and there's no reason to think that they can't, it might not even matter. Again, I think that a lot of the Red Blacks games this season, at least until both of their quarterbacks get injured, are going to be about, can you keep up with us? This is the Golden State Warriors of the CFL right now. They're gonna run up the points, and they're gonna make you run with them. What I thought was most interesting about Harris was not how good he was, although that was quite a show. But for me, what was interesting is that you almost want the Red Blacks to have a platoon system if that were realistic, because Edmonton was bringing in that front four. That all-star front four that they had last year, brought all the guys back. We knew that there was going to be pass rushes through this whole game. Then Burris goes down. You bring in this guy with more arm strength and a quicker release. Bam! He just torched that secondary in the second half, and that's the kind of quarterback he is. And I almost like to see that where playing against that deep playing secondary, you have Burris start the game, and then playing against a brutal front four, you have Harris starting the game. I think that'd be awesome. I know it's not realistic, but you'd almost like to see that. As far as the defense in Ottawa, does Ottawa have a defense? Do they need one?
All right, then we go to the final game of the week. Chris Rainey scored 2 touchdowns, made a clutch second down catch late in the game, helping the Lions grind out a 20-18 home opening win against the Calgary Stampeders. Rainey was awesome that night. But the thing that got me was they win the game even after having 3 kicks or 3 special team blocks in the first half. Brian, you ever seen anything like that and the team not really get beaten by it?
No, that amazed me. Normally when things happen like that, you not only get beat, usually you get beat bad. So for it to turn out the way it did, that was truly surprising, and yeah, just sometimes it's interesting that somehow football always has a way of surprising you, and that was certainly a huge deal. I'd never seen anything like that.
All right, so Robert, what was your take on that game?
You know what? A team that can overcome mistakes like that and still win. I mean, that's a mark of a championship team. I mean, you can go back in time and look at. I remember we went 9-9 in the season and still ended up winning the Grey Cup. You know, so and I'll tell you from firsthand, having played in BC, BC and Calgary do not like one another. I don't know how it probably goes back farther than before I played there, but it's always a bloodbath when those two teams play. And, you know, and they get one up on a good Calgary team is just that speaks volumes. I mean, as I said before, games in the beginning don't mean anything, but this game was about pride, especially in the Western Conference.
All right, Os, what was your take on the game?
For me, this was a total Wally blown-out move. You know, just do enough, just stay in the game. You know, don't let the mistakes get to you. Just play your game. You know, you don't have to make the flashy play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all they needed to do against this Calgary team because, whoa, this Calgary team looked slow and, I don't know, hungover, something.
Training camp.
Yeah, there you go. They're clearly still in training camp. I mean, you talk about the 3-block punts, and you figure, oh yeah, okay. So Calgary dominated on special teams, but then they let Chris Rainey score the go-ahead touchdown on a punt return. You know, Paredes misses 2 field goals. He misses the extra point conversion. I mean, not even in this area did the Stampeders really dominate. And, yeah, again, you're right. It looked like training camp during that quarter where they're blocking every punt that comes down the pike. It looked like a drill because in the rest of the game, that special teams unit was not even there. You know, as a Calgary fan, I'm disappointed. I'm not gonna throw my season away based on this game, but I am disappointed that they didn't show a little bit more. If you ask me, Calgary lost this game rather than BC winning.
All right, so that will bring us to next week, which will be Week 2, and the actual pick'em part of the show. We're going to start off. We will let Robert pick the first game. The first game is Ottawa against Montreal, and the question will be, I think we're going to get to see exactly really how good Montreal's defense is this week.
Who's going to be the Ottawa starting quarterback?
Well,
I think it's
what
Harris.
I hear, Trevor Harris is going to play. That's what I heard this morning.
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, my heart says Montreal, but my mind says, go with Ottawa, and the quarterback with a hot hand.
All right, Brian?
I've got to take Ottawa. To me, that they're a deep team. They're that offensively very strong, and I think Ottawa's going to win. I think they're going to win big.
Yeah, I think Ottawa's going to win the game too. I don't think they'll have as much problem with the defensive line as what was had last week, because Montreal pretty much dominated Winnipeg on defense. So here you go, Os. You said you're a Montreal fan. You're going to have the guts and just go ahead and pick the Alouettes at home against Ottawa?
Nah, no guts. No guts. Therefore, no glory. I'm down with Robert. My heart says Montreal. My head says Ottawa. The only way Montreal can pull off this game is if they dominate time of possession. They've got to keep the ball. They've got to keep that Ottawa defense on the field. But I just don't think they're going to do it enough.
All right, that brings.
It's going to be closer than people think, though. I will say that. It's going to be.
I think that also. It's going to be a lot closer than people think.
Yeah. This is going to be a close one.
Brian, you think it's going to be a close game?
No.
Yeah, I
do not think it's going to be a close game.
I think Ottawa beats them like 44-10 or something. But
no way.
I could be wrong. Let's see. That brings us to Toronto against Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan's first game of the season. We'll start off with Brian.
This one's been tough. my heart and my mind and everything is telling me to go for what people are going to consider to be the upset. I'm going to take Toronto in this one. I just feel just something is telling me first game. Your improvement is always from week 1 to week 2. I think Toronto is going to play a better game. Saskatchewan coming out in their opener. I'm going with the upset.
All right, Oz.
I'm putting a lot on Ricky Ray's low play. I'm putting a lot on what I consider to be not a very good defense in Toronto. But I'm going with Saskatchewan to win the home opener. I do think that they're going to have trouble in the first half of the season. I don't think things will be smooth sailing, but I do think they're going to win this one. I think Toronto still needs to sort some things out. Saskatchewan.
All right, Robert.
I'm going to go with Toronto for the simple fact of they. All with the playing in a new stadium, having Damon Allen, Pinball Clemens, Niederbrock, Rocket Ismail all come back there. There was so much hype and everything for this home opener. Theismann was there also. So now that's behind them. They don't have to worry about that. There are a lot of times we played games where we just got away from home that we were way more relaxed. So they're going to be way more relaxed. Ricky Ray's going to be able to go out there and play his game, and I just think Toronto now doesn't have all the outside worries, on their mind. They can just go out there and play football, and I picked them in an upset.
I'm going to go with Oz, actually, on this one. I'm going to go with Saskatchewan. We haven't seen them yet, except for preseason, so we don't really know what's going to happen. We saw one game from Toronto. I don't think they're that bad, but I'm going to go with the home team here. That brings us
before we close this one out, I've got a follow-up for Robert. Robert, do you think that the Rough Riders are looking at extra pressure this week with a home opener, with the new coach, with the high expectations for this season? Do you think they're facing something similar to what Toronto did?
Yep, 100%. As someone who's lived through it before, it's like there's more pressure than just a football game. When you bring out outside entities that like that. It's almost as if it's a must-win, and that puts you, even as a player, that just puts a lot of pressure on you. It's like it's not just about you just winning or losing a game. Now it's about the city and the corporate sponsors, and it's just so much to think about. And when you think too much, you don't play good football.
That's a great point, but I'm not changing my pick.
Robert, don't you think the big thing to that game is getting off to a good start then? Because Toronto got off to a bad start, and that pressure mounts even more on you then.
I mean, it does, but, as a player, you try and go out there and just play the game, and, you just play the game you love to play, but, there's so many outside factors. You look at the sideline, and I'm pretty sure the Toronto players, they look at the sideline, they saw Joe Theismann there or Damon Allen there or Pinball. They're looking at legends, so now they're just not playing a game, for Toronto, they weren't just playing a game against Hamilton. They were playing a game to win for the legends also, and that just puts a lot of added pressure on you that, that you can't control. So from that standpoint, I'm thinking it's just sometimes you say to yourself, it's like, and that's what I said. That's why I think Toronto this is a perfect opportunity for Toronto to go into a game and steal one. Because that's what I definitely call it. They'll be definitely stealing this game if they win.
All right, Oz, let's go BC against Hamilton.
Well, I think I've got to go Hamilton here. I mean, playing at home as good as they looked last week, as good as they looked through 2/3 of the season last year, and, despite all the losses, especially on the defense, this looks to be just as scary a team as the first half last season. I'm going Hamilton. I think this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'm going with Hamilton also. Brian?
Hamilton. I don't I don't think you can go any other direction here.
Right.
There's no way I can go with B. Hamilton looked too good.
All right. And the last game of the week, we've got Winnipeg against Calgary. I'll start this one off. I'm going to go with Calgary. Robert?
Calgary doesn't lose 2 in a row.
Oz?
Yeah, hard to imagine Winnipeg going 0-2, but yeah, I've got it. It's harder to imagine Calgary starting 0-2, so I'm going the Stampeders.
All right, Brian?
Yeah, I have to agree. Calgary doesn't lose 2 in a row.
All right. Well, we only disagree. Me and Oz disagree.
So the game of the week is Saskatchewan-Toronto.
Yeah. I think the game of the week is BC-Hamilton. We can watch Rainey, and, I mean, there'll be some special teams touchdowns in that game probably.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with that.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, you get the two best return men probably in the league. So, Brian, any final words?
Just looking forward to the games this week. I got a bye week this week, so I get to sit back and actually watch football in real time instead of having to go back and watch it a day later. So I'm pretty excited about that.
All right, Os, any final words?
Yeah, American fans, if you're listening to the show and you didn't happen to catch the Ottawa-Edmonton game, I believe it's still available on ESPN3. Do yourself a favor and go back and look at that one. This game really shows the fun and excitement of what the CFL is, and a lot of, considered the top 50 players in the game were in that game. I highly recommend that, and I highly recommend probably skipping the BC Calgary game. You probably don't want to watch that one.
All right, Robert.
From a player standpoint, it's an extra week away from training camp. These guys, you're going to see a lot better football now because now these guys are 2 weeks removed from training camp. They got their legs back. They got comfortable to their living situations. They're all acclimated to the cities they're in. So, as you get farther away from training camp, you start to get a better rapport with your team. You get a better rapport with your city. You get a better rapport with your surroundings and everything. So the football is going to get a lot better. Week 1 really means nothing. It's just like you bring a baby home for the first time. You get adjusted. These guys are getting adjusted now, and the football is really going to start to be played now.
Yeah, it's kind of like listening to the show our first week. It's the first time we've been all together. I'm sure we'll be a lot better even next week.
Definitely will.
But Robert, Brian, Os, thanks for coming on. I want to remind everybody you can catch the Rouge, White, and Blue tomorrow night with Os Davis and Joe Pritchard. Also, our CFL Legend show. Last week we had Dieter Brock on. The week before, Robert Drummond. You can go to thegruelingtruth.net, catch all those. We will have NFL Legend show tomorrow with former Cincinnati Bengal linebacker Reggie Williams.
When are the new CFL Power Rankings up?
Oh, yeah, the CFL Power Rankings are up. They came up this morning. They will be up every Monday morning, so you can go to thegruelingtruth.net, check out the Power Rankings every week. Os, I think you're going to be writing an article about this past week also coming up, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll be launching. I love this. It sounds so important, like a NASA or something. I'll be launching the first of my weekly roundup preview columns for the CFL, which I hope to continue throughout the whole season. So look for that, I guess, tomorrow.
All right. In our NFL Legends show, we've just agreed to Kurt Warner, not the quarterback, but the former running back from the Seattle Seahawks, will be on next Tuesday night. We're setting up a date with Carl Mecklenburg, the former great Denver Broncos linebacker.
Nice.
Yeah. So, guys, make sure that you go check out everything on thegruelingtruth.net. Our shows can be heard on iTunes, iHeart, TuneIn, Google Play, pretty much anywhere you get a podcast, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So make sure you check us out every Monday for the CFL Pick'em Show. It'll be released every evening. So make sure you go check that out every week. So for Brian Schmidt, Os Davis, Robert Drummond, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.